Journeys Ahead. Lineage. Chapter 2. Lost and Found. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Come on, Void, show me what you've got. A younger Core said to his little brother as he swung a wooden training spear downwards. Void, the smaller of the pair, at the age of 7, deflected back with his own stick, causing a soft crack to rapture out across Salvaheim's foresty lands. Now, boys, take it easy, called out Void's and Core's father as he stood upon his home porch, overlooking his two boys play fighting. You're being too rough, shouted the young Void, who stumbled upon Salvaheim's blue grass for a moment and audibly sounding distressed. Too rough? I barely tapped you, you dork. Core jokingly called back, but stopped upon seeing the annoyance in Void's face. Core deeply loved his little brother, and wasn't the type to try and upset him on purpose. The older Novason was 16, almost 17 at this time, but never really acted his age. He was more grown up than he'd like to admit. Having been a child in the search for a new home, he had to adapt to the modern ways of life faster than most kids during that time would have. To survive would be a better way of describing it. Hey, Void, let's do this one more time. I'm sure you'll get it right, Core expressed, watching as Void slowly postured himself again and readied his wooden spear. Remember what Father taught you? He then asked, watching as Void thought for a moment. Stay focused? Little Void inquired with a head tilt. Right on the money. Now, remember Mom's teachings as well. Strafe to the left, and then to the right, and then upwards or forwards when your target is thrown off balance. Core continued to explain as he himself readied his spear. Will I really need to fight one day? Little Void worriedly asked, leaving Core to shrug his shoulders. Maybe, but unlikely. This is just to be safe, you know? Nodding his small head to this, Void spread his tiny legs and took in a short breath, and then made his move. Lunging forward and swinging with an awkward left strike, the little spark smashed it against Core's spear, before awkwardly doing the same maneuver to his right. With a little grin, Core allowed himself to release the spear at his side to give Void the confidence he needed. Seeing the open target, the small spark gently pushed his spear forward and collected smoothed out top against the orange crest of Core. Oh, you got me. Core wheezed out with a fake dying sound before collapsing to the ground. How could you do that to your own brother? He fake groaned, leaving the small Void to giggle in triumph. I got you. He then squealed before looking to his father upon the porch. Father, I got him! Nodding his head with a smile, Nova stood up and replied with an affirmed, Well done, Void. Well done. Slowly sitting up and brushing the grass off his body, Core smiled at his little brother, who turned with a sense of pride. I got you! He exclaimed once more, before Core reached out and rubbed his round, wintry blue head. Yeah, you sure did, buddy. Boys, it's time for dinner! Celeste called from the kitchen window, which got everyone's attention in full. Now standing back to his feet and stepping back from the little spark, Core crossed his arms before asking him, Want to do that again tomorrow? I don't have teacher training till next Friday. Nodding with a happy posture, Void looked across his arms to mimic his brother, leaving the older of the two shaking his head and smiling on. He was proud of the spark Void was becoming. Sure, he had his temper tantrums, but there was good in him. Like any living creature, there was good in him. Now, nearly 20 years later from that day, the two brothers stood the same length apart, both in completely different circumstances. It was as though worlds had clashed. Two families both seemingly tethered by two souls, souls that were in both complete and utter disbelief. Small snow drizzled down with the smoke from above, while the cold water continuously splashed against their feet. But nothing could shake the astonished and almost petrified stare from the two brothers, orange eyes meeting blue eyes, lost soul to lost soul. Void. Kor stated again as his mask retracted away into his back collar piece. Kid. Atlas asked as his mask retracted by a split down the middle before collapsing behind his neck. The four-legged Spark's face was definitely the same one Void had recognized from his younger days, just older and more tired looking than before. Little one, is it... How can this be? Evelyn asked as her eyes softened behind her visor. Void couldn't say anything. His glowing blue eyes were wide and unblinking. His legs felt the buckle, and his arms and hands ever so gently shivered. He had cat tongue, stuck in shock, all while Jida and the rest continued to gaze on in amazement upon the trio of hardened fighters. They had all heard the stories of the Sparks, and especially these three, Kor and his two friends, Atlas and Evelyn. But Void thought them to be dead. Every Spark outside of himself was thought to be gone. Yet here they were, ghosts from the past that still stood to this very day. Brother? Kor asked again before reaching out with a shaking hand. Flinching in response, Void took a step back and deployed his left arm blaster with an accompanied shout. Get back! Retracting with a gasping step backwards, Kor, along with both Atlas and Evelyn, shuffled themselves away just a tad, along with the majority of Void's family. You're not real. You're not them. You can't be. He cried out as a face of anguish began to grow upon him. Void, what are you? Jida gasped out, being the only one to not take a step back. They're not real. This is some kind of trick of the mind. An illusion. Spouted the Spark as Kor slowly raised his hands up in a calming gesture towards his brother. Void. He expressed again, making the Spark shake his head in return. No, you died. All of you died. Years ago. Void began to shout aloud with a shaking arm cannon. Glancing at both Atlas and Evelyn, Kor released a shaken breath before looking back down to his little brother. Taking a slow step forward, Kor trudged his way through the water and carefully approached the now blue glowing Spark. Void. It's me. It's us. There's no trick. Unless you're the trick. Kor began while Jida gently placed a hand upon Void's shoulder. Void, we see them too. She affirmed, making the Spark shake his head again. No, you can't. How is this? How is this? I don't understand. He began as tears started to swell in his oval-shaped eyes. This can't be. This can't be real. Can't be. Can't. He continued as Kor neared ever closer, now looking at Jida. He was unaware of who she and the others were that accompanied Void, but Kor was smart enough to know that she knew his brother well from the little gesture to his shoulder. With a shocked nod, Jida gestured for Kor to take the reins and took a small step backwards away from the two of them. Void, it's okay. Breathe, it's me. Continued the larger Spark as he reached out and gently lowered Void's arm cannon downwards, causing it to revert back to its normal hand. With quiet tears streaming down his face, Void gazed up upon Kor, who also began to leak from his now noticeably orange glowing eyes. Carefully, the pumpkin-colored crested Spark rose his hands up and gently held the sides of Void's face. It felt unreal for the both of them. It was as though they were looking at dead men, almost 15 years apart since the Purge, but nobody could blame them. How can I know? Void quietly asked as his whole body began to shake and break down with emotions. Cord then began to recite a set of words that Void knew all too well. 1 cup of noodles. 6 grams of celestial sauce. Boil for 5 minutes. Rest for 7. He recited a recipe for the Sparks version of spaghetti. Cord was the one who would always make it for Void when he was younger, using that exact recipe to make it just right for him, confirming the unbelievable. It was really him. Cord? Void weakly choked out before lunging forward and embracing his brother. Without hesitation, the older Novason wrapped his large arms around Void in return. With crumbling legs, the two of them fell to be knee-level in the water, just rocking back and forth in each other's arms for a good and long few moments. As the brothers shared their reunion, Jida and the others couldn't help but stare in awe at the sight, along with both Atlas and Evelyn doing the same. It was insane, yet incredible, they thought. Utterly incredible. Now, slowly standing back to their feet and collecting themselves to the best of their abilities, Core and Void gripped upon each other's right and left hand with a firm hold and brotherly shake, a sign of kindled companionship and refueled hope and joy. However, through these puddles of love remained a sea of unanswered questions upon both sides. You got taller. Void weakly realized, while Core huffed and replied with his own realization. And you're blue. After a small moment of silence, the both of them began to increasingly chuckle and shake their heads. There were so many questions and so many answers to give, the first of which Void had to say. Okay, wow. Everyone, this is my brother, Core Novason. Void introduced as he and Core looked back towards Jida and the others. Raising a gentle fist up and pressing it against his chest, Core took a small bow towards them, while both Atlas and Evelyn approached from behind. Greetings to you all, expressed the older Spark, as Void then introduced the other two. These two here their names are Atlas Scrape and Evelyn Scorch. They helped me get out of Salvaheim during the purge. Smirking and sheathing his katana away, Atlas stood upright and crossed his arms before speaking in a firm yet greeting tone. What's up? He introduced, before reaching down and rubbing Void's head with an astonished smile. Salutations, came through Evelyn's speaker as she also approached Void and gave him a tight and tender hug, having missed the once little kid that used to bug her. Wow. It's an honor to... Wow. Jida gasped out with an amazed face while gazing upon the three otherworldly beings. More sparks. That was the last thing I was expecting. Nock joined in as the others behind just stared and waved. Core, everyone, these people here, these are my friends, my family. Void began as he gestured towards each one of them. This beautiful woman right here, she's my wife, Jida Woods. Void revealed, wiping his tears again, while leaving Core's eyes as well as Atlas and Evelyn's to perk. Your wife? Core asked with a small smile beginning to grow on his face. Hi, it's... Wow, this is crazy. Oh my god, what? Hi, ow. Jida introduced herself while reaching her hand out for Core and stumbling her words. Without a second thought, the large Spark took Jida's hand in both of his and proceeded to shake it with a firm smile. Jida, it's a pleasure to meet you, he said with a gentle tenderness to his voice before glancing up towards the others. Those two guys are Nock and Cot. The robot is Jet, and behind him are our other friends, Sarv and Tucker. Void revealed, gesturing to everyone else. Well, if it ain't my pleasure to meet all of yous, come here. Sarah exclaimed as she approached Atlas and gave him a large hug, in turn making the four-legged Spark wince with a confused and uncomfortable expression. Oh, whoa, okay, we gotta hug her. He groaned as he was lifted off the ground by Sarv's incredible strength. Pieces, I never realized Sparks could get so tall. Nox said as he approached and gazed upon Evelyn, who gazed back down upon the little man. Rearing her tail around, she gently clasped Nox in its claw-like shape and raised him up to be eye level with herself. Okay, up I go, I guess. Nox worriedly said as the both of them locked eyes. You got a problem with tall, sugar? Evelyn asked, making Nox's face perk with worry. I'm just joking. It's a pleasure to meet you. All of you. Teased the sharp-tailed Spark before gently placing Nox back on the ground. Oh, how could I forget? This is Pofnu. My dog, I guess. She's a kitsune from the lands of the Shinto. Void expressed as Pofnu pranced up before Kor and licked his hand with glee. Kor was astonished by it all. Not only was his brother alive, he had a wife and a found family. Void had not only just survived, he seemed to have made a place for himself in this dimension. The sense of joy and curiosity burned deeply within Kor's soul, especially when glancing down towards Jaida's visibly pregnant stomach. Kor, what did you guys do to that creature? What was it and where did it? Void still found himself stumbling through his words. His mind was still trying to piece it all together, to make it right, but he would still need a few hours more to process it all. There is much to discuss from both sides, I see. Kor elaborated before turning both Atlas and Evelyn. You two, scour the forest. Make sure remnants of Abaddon didn't spread anywhere else. I just need to. Placing a hand upon Kor's shoulder, Atlas nodded his head with an understanding gesture before turning back towards Evelyn. Come on, love. Let's make this quick. Expressed the large Spark before crouching down and leaping forward with an astonishing height and speed. Nodding and following behind, Evelyn shot forth her two purple blades into the tree line and followed behind Atlas in a pulling swing. The both of them now disappearing into the trees. Abaddon? Void asked with a curious tone. The beast that was approaching you and your family. Kor revealed before transforming his arm into a strange device. It looked like a clear canister that had 3 sharp spikes protruding from its blaster-looking edge. Within the weapon's confines, there was a purple glowing energy that swirled around in a misty haze, the same glow that radiated off the beast's chest. Come, all of you, let's talk. There is much I need to hear and much I must explain. Kor stated before placing his arm around Void and pulling him close. Yeah, no kidding. Void replied before looking to the side, still in a state of complete disbelief. With a collection of steps and footfalls, Void and Kor both walked side by side, while Jaida and the rest followed behind at a distance, ensuring that the two found brothers had space. They had all exited the water stream and now traversed through a less smoky section of the forest. Patches of snow and leaves crunched beneath their feet as they continued forth, yet felt a sense of awkwardness within the air. Void and Kor were both quiet for a chunk of the walk. Neither of them knew how to approach the situation, to talk as though they hadn't been separated or thought the other dead for the last decade. It was uneasy, truth be told, but someone had to crack the ice. Why didn't you come and find me? Void quietly asked as he gave his older brother a questioning side-eye. We awaited a transmission, answered Kor as he looked down the void with a sense of regretful sorrow. For over a year, we waited for an answer that never came. We thought you to be dead. Shoving his metallic hands into his pant pockets, Void narrowed his sights to the grassy yet muddy grounds and proceeded to kick a rock forward through his thoughts. Mother and father were supposed to come with me and signal, I suppose. Until... Wait, are they... Void perked up with light as he rolled his head towards his brother, who didn't have the same reaction. Rather, it was a sorrowful one. I was about to ask you the same. But no, they're not with me and the other two. With his hope fading, Void turned back forward with a defeated haze in his eyes, knowing now for certain the fate of his parents. Then their sacrifice for me was truly their end. Void regretfully sighed out before feeling Kor's arm wrap around him once more. Sacrifice to save you? He asked with a raised eyebrow. We found a rift station, a one-way portal. A glitch came up behind us and they sent me through as they took on the monster. Void explained before falling silent once more, leaving Kor to just comfort him in return. Looks like they're finally talking. Nock brought up as he walked alongside Jida in little steps. Oh good, I was worried they may have been bitter towards one another. The blue and orange tinted robot with a screen face stated in a lower volume while everyone else just watched on. Guys, you gotta remember, that's Void's brother. Jida reminded as she watched the two sparks chat on. I know you know his story, but from what Void's told me, he thought like all the other sparks that he was dead. He was always just so torn up about it. Of course it's gonna take a moment for them to chat. Just let them be for the time being. Jida reasoned with a serious tone in her voice. She herself still couldn't believe her eyes, but she knew full well how important this was to Void in that moment. So, she stood back, making sure the others did as well. Void, I know this may come off as rude and just unjust to ask, but could you explain to me how you got to where you are now? You were but a boy when those glitched, as you call them, attacked? How did you get here? The older Novason inquired, leaving Void to ponder for a moment. As long as you do the same for me. He replied, leaving Kor to nod his head. Of course. Pulling his hands out from his pockets and looking up at the snow-falling sky, Void released a clouded breath into the air before beginning from the top. After mother and father pushed me through, I found myself living off the streets for a while, scavenging for food, begging for money. Until one day, I came across another set that glitched, attacking innocent people. Right then and there, I fought them. I fought them out of hate and anger for what they did to us. Void revealed while slightly clenching his fists. I swore revenge and made a vow to hunt every last one of them down. I did that for almost 10 whole years. Void continued, reflecting upon the years of searching, struggling, and all the pain. Yet, my rage soon fell to that of honoring our people. My fight wasn't just for the sparks, but for the innocent. I swore to never let another reality fall like Salvaheim, always reciting the same quote from our people. For those we lost, and for those we honor. Kor finished, being entranced in Void's story. You talk as though you either failed or completed this truthfully unbelievable goal. Surely there's more to this. Kor inquired, causing Void to breathe away the past, and then smile a tad. Would you believe me if I were to tell you that we actually stopped them? Stopping in his tracks, Kor turned his body fully towards his little brother with wide eyes, and asked with an almost gasping breath. Wait, you actually... Who's we? Kor demanded to know with an astonished expression and quivering tone leaving his mouth. Turning to the side and raising his arm and palm out, the blue spark gestured to the woman in front of everyone in the back, and simply answered, her. Turning his sights towards Jida, Core tilted his head with an inquisitive expression, leaving the musician to stop mid-stride and halt the others behind her. Jida, everyone, come here. Void asked towards his family with a small beckoning gesture. Carefully trudging up, Jida stood next to Void and wrapped her left hand around his right, all now beginning to walk and talk again. When tracking one of the glitches, I found myself crashing into this dimension, this city called Aurora, where I met the love of my life. Void explained as he set his sights upon Jida with a blushing smile. Are we going over our origin stories? Inquired the orange-haired musician, whose hair flustered with that of a campfire's glow. No, I just brought up how you helped me stop the glitch. Void replied, while Core squinted in a continuous stare at the musician. Miss Woods, may I ask, your hair, is that cosmic fire I sense? Core questioned, pointing his finger to her noticeably bright head. Huh? Oh, yeah. I kinda have the powers of a fire god coursing through my veins. Jida awkwardly and quickly explained before rubbing the back of her head. She helped me figure out how to stop them. They all nested in Salvaheim. There was a whole mirror space underneath the world's feet. Void explained, throwing his free arm out to the side. Together, we went in and... Before Void could finish, Jida chimed in and finished the spark's words in her own way. We kicked some serious ass. She exclaimed, making a punching and kicking motion with her free hand and leg. Closing his slightly dropped mouth and nodding, Core glanced between the group of oddballs and then back forward to the rows of trees and snow, now slightly laughing in a shocked scoff. That's wonderful. Are they truly dead? Core inquired, leaving Void to give a positive shrug. It's been almost 6 years since there's been an attack. I'd say that in terms of being dead, they're well 6 feet under. Void assured in a positive tone, leaving Core to just close his eyes and breathe gently with relief. That is a heavy weight lifted off my shoulders. Alice and Evelyn will be over the moons when they hear about this. After saying these words, Core opened his eyes towards his brother and fiancé and began with a new set of words. Mother and father always saw greatness in you. If only they could see your accomplishments now. Core finished, leaving Void to look down with a gentle warmth in his chest. I'm assuming after that you and Jida here settled down. Core speculated as he craned his sights back to the entire group. Not exactly. A bunch of cultist snakes attacked the city, we got wrapped into a bunch of BS with that, and Void even died before getting electricity powers. Nock suddenly babbled, making Core shake his head with a sudden influx of confusion. What? I beg your pardon? He asked with a sudden flicker in his orange eyes. That's a story that needs some time to explain. All you should really know is that I kind of... died. But, thanks to Jida's fire and some too complicated to explain poison, I came back with some new tricks up my sleeve. Void awkwardly explained before raising his free hand up and sparking surges of electricity from his fingertips and horns. Whoa, is that bioelectricity? Core questioned with an accompanied raised eyebrow, leaving Void to shrug again. Some form of cosmic electricity, as I call it. I'm still trying to figure out how exactly it works, but it keeps me energized, I'll tell you that much. Void continued to explain as Core took notice of the blue surges of power flowing within his crest piece. Fascinating, replied Core as Jida continued to speak after Void. After that whole ordeal, we started dating and soon got married and had a beautiful honeymoon, and now we're about to be parents to, surprise, either your niece or nephew. Jida exclaimed while tapping her belly like a set of drums. Look, it's been a crazy few years since Salvaheim, but I found my place here, my life. I'm sure you can see that. Void expressed as he pulled Jida closely to his side, leaving the two to nuzzle foreheads for only a short moment. Turning and stopping the group's walk yet again, Core eyed down Jida's stomach before glancing back up to her stare. May I? He asked before glancing back down. Go ahead. They're your family too. Jida replied with a heartfelt smile. Slowly kneeling down, Kor gently extended his fingers forward and rested them upon the glowing purple and blue aura. A tickling sensation then began upon his fingertips as the life within Jida was drawn to the spark's touch, signifying that the blood connection was there. Softly sighing with a smile, Kor nodded his head and stood back up to his taller-than-life height. Shaking his head, he crossed his arms and eyed down his little brother, admiring who he now was and the life he had made for himself. Kor was only now one word in the moment: proud. By Matira, this whole time I thought you to be dead, when in actuality you were doing all this, avenging, surviving, and continuing our family's bloodline. Kor was lost for words. He couldn't convey his emotions in that moment. He needed more time to think on it all. However, there was one more thing he needed to say. I missed you, is all Kor could let out before kneeling down and placing a hand upon Void's shoulder. So much. With a wincing smile, Void reached out and returned the gesture, placing his hand upon Kor's shoulder until the two of them leaned forward and touched foreheads. As did I. I still can't believe you're alive. Releasing and stepping back from one another, Void rose his arms up and crossed them with a growing curious stare, before popping his own question. Now, your turn. What have you and the Lovebirds been up to for the last 15 years? And again, what the hell was Abaddon? Before Kor could speak, both Atlas and Evelyn leapt down from the trees and upon the group, landing firmly on both their feet in a tense manner. Oh, pieces! Nock shouted in fright, falling into Tugger's big beer gut. Oh, sorry about that, little guy. Atlas apologized with a wince and reached towards Nock. Scan is complete. Abaddon wasn't able to release any M radiation upon transformation. We dissolved it just in the nick of time, Evelyn expressed before turning down the Void and his wife. Hello again, little one. Jida, she greeted before rubbing the spark's head. Radiation? Void asked, making Kor and his buddies look at one another and then back. I believe it would be easier to explain once we reach our ship. Trust me, there's a lot to discuss. Kor stated again before turning and gesturing for everyone to follow him. This way. The reformator shouldn't be too far up ahead now. He called, leading Void and the others to look at one another in a baffled stare. Reformator? Tucker repeated in a curious tone whilst adjusting his survival pack. It's the name of our ship. Sorry for the rude entrance, by the way. It was out of our control. Atlas exclaimed as he extended his legs and walked like a spider above Void and his crew. Holding each other's hands tighter, Void and Jida stood close and followed behind the larger sparks, curious to see where this was going. For a few miles more, the now massive group traversed through thickets and snow before finally coming upon a large tree-split clearing, all smoke and rubble with no visible large ship to be seen. You may not see it, but the reformator is right before your eyes. We added cloak to avoid detection from the world residents. Kor revealed before lifting up his arm and clicking a few buttons upon it. This in turn caused a bright light to suddenly shimmer the life as a massive starred doorway before all. We know it's laying on its side, but the gravity fields within will refocus you to an upright position once inside. Evelyn explained before approaching the glowing door and leaping inside, disappearing behind its shining portal-like essence. We promise it's perfectly safe. Just expect to be a little bit dizzy. If you need to puke, just go over the rails and let it loose to the energy below. Atlas then explained before crossing through as well. Kor, how did you guys make a ship this big? Asked Void as he and the others approached with a found sense of awe. All questions will be answered. Come, welcome to the reformator. Kor introduced with both his arms raised before turning and walking through the star. This is the craziest shit I've ever done. Cop mumbled under his breath. Well, when your adopted sister is Jida Woods and brother-in-law is Void Novason, you just kinda run the crazy, it seems. Nox sighed out as Povnu was the first to trot up and leap inside. Well, you saw the fox. First time for everything. Sarv reasoned with a shrug while holding Tucker's hand. Let's not waste any more time then. I need some answers. Void finished as he and Jida approached the star with the others close behind. At last, they crossed through into the large, camouflaged ship, disappearing from world view. Stepping through to the other side, Void as well as the others shielded their eyes for a moment, before allowing their vision to adjust upon the interior of this so-called reformatter. Once it had all settled, they all fell to a state of complete astonishment as to what lay in wait. Whoa. Void gasped out as the other three sparks stood defiant, awaiting their reactions. Before them all was the vastly wide and tall interior of the Spark ship that looked to have jumped straight out of a sci-fi story. Massive, shiny silver walls stretched up and around, connecting and forming into large shapes that seemed to act as many floors as well as rooms. Many metal pathways lined the walls and space around that ended up connecting in one way or another. All these formations also had a reflective tint while pulsating with rays of orange and blue energies within their panel lines. In between these many pathways and locations stretched up and down purple metals that held these same powers of blue and orange, flaking with light and dancing off with bubbly looking power surges. Within the center of all of this was a glowing beam of tangy yellow light that stretched all the way down to a chasm that Void could only speculate to have been the strange needle piece below. Little cube robots also flew around with fluttering transparent orange wings, carrying machine pieces as well as metal trinkets. They appeared to be repairing the ship's damaged form to the best of their ability, replacing parts and tearing out old ones. They were a unique build, everyone thought, especially with Jet, who tried waving at a few. Core, what is all this? Void asked as everyone began to walk across one of the large and reflective metal platforms. The future, is all Core replied with, before walking everyone up to an end segment that pulsated with a purple haze. Once all stood upon its form, Core clicked a few mere buttons upon his arm and set the floor below their feet to rise up into the air, revealing itself to have been a levitating platform. Oh, goodness! Sarv hooted out as she steadied herself against Tucker. Startle ya? Alice asked with a smug expression towards the Thorn, who softly chuckled back with a nervous tone. What do you mean by the future? Void asked as he gazed upon his brother once more, while everyone else continued to look around in awe. This is what me and the others have been up to for the last decade, crafting these machines in hopes to, well, it'll be easier to explain once we reach the top. Core replied, leaving Void to tilt his head in a curious manner. You've been avoiding the question a lot. Is it really that much? Looking to stare forward in a deep sense of thought, the larger Spark slowly craned his head down and replied with a set of words that made Void's mind buzz with an even heavier amount of curiosity. More than you could possibly imagine. Stopping atop one of the highest floors, Core took the lead and guided everyone out and aboard a much larger sector piece, this one being built in a more circular shape than the other platforms, and having tons of different areas constructed along the tall walls. Glass windows around all revealed what looked like labs and testing areas of some sort within, all beaming and glowing with neon shining lights. One room glimmered blue, another orange, and some even with sets of hot pink. Large tubes also stretched in and out of their walls, all pulsating with similar auras of power that looked unreal towards Void and the others. Void, I understand I may be coming off as vague or unresponsive, but I need you to just follow my word here to understand. Core began as everyone eyed a large centerpiece within the floor to the ceiling above. It was, for the lack of a better term, a massive glass container that sat with glowing orange energy within. It held a power that felt to radiate a cold sense to all those who stood before it, being a mixture of both shivers and also heat in some areas. Then, Void felt it once again. That sense of familiarity and nostalgia. It was coming from the massive tube of unknown power. Yet, it was then Void and a few of the others took notice of something else. A sort of shuffling blur that ran from one of the lab rooms to behind the orange tube. What was that? Jada asked with a startled vocal tone. Turning his gaze downwards, Void set his sights upon where he and the others saw the movement, and curiously glanced at Core, who had a similar reaction as him. Perfect timing, he mentioned before walking forward and kneeling down at the massive container's side. Void, there's someone I'd like for you to meet. Core began, getting everyone to look in his general direction. Looming at one another, both Void and Jada glanced with curious stares before the two of them approached Core's side, wondering what he was talking about. Hey, I know you're hiding over there. You can come out. It's okay. Core began, speaking in a softer and more collected voice as he peeked his head more so to the left. Raising an eyebrow, Void slowly approached closer to his brother's side and tried to see who or what he was talking to. The way Core was speaking felt similar to how he once spoke to Void in his youth. It was both familiar yet altered in a different sense of the word. Come on out. Please? He continued asking, seemingly giving whatever it was behind the tube the courage to step from the shadows. What Void and the others then saw sent a sudden wave of emotions through their hearts. Void especially found his eyes and mouth widening with disbelief to what had emerged. With small steps, walked forward a tiny figure into the light. It was a little girl, a young spark. This spark wore a mixture of yellows and purples. It was a lavender pair of short-cut overalls that rested upon a sunflower-shaded sleeve shirt. The girl even wore matching yellow rain boots to accompany the look. Her head and skin pattern was also unlike anything Void had ever seen. The little girl's skin was that of a light shade of purple, yet had a large yellow rounded-off stripe going down her forehead. This little spark also had big yellow and white iris eyes that were furrowed down in a nervous expression. 4 horns rested atop her head, yet none sat at her cheeks, being replaced with little freckles instead. Her biomechanical body was also along the lines of Core's, a more evolved look, being more humanoid with shapes of metallic purple that matched her skin color. The last thing Void and the others took notice of was a strange and goopy little creature within her arms. It was a teal, bug-eyed looking thing that had 7 orange orbs floating above itself. Whatever it was, it appeared to be the little spark's pet. Void, Jida, this is your niece, my daughter, Joby. Core revealed before standing back to his feet. With wide and shocked eyes, Void couldn't take his sights off the small spark. She was an adorable but nervous little thing that caused Void's beating heart to warm once more with a sense of newfound love as well as instinctual protection. What? You have a kid? He asked, looking at Core, who simply nodded and gestured for him to approach. Oh my god, she's adorable! Jida choked out before covering her mouth with both hands, pressed in a prayer-looking manner. Turning back and slowly taking a step forward, Void gently got down upon one knee and locked his eyes with Joby's. The little one looked both confused and nervous to the sudden appearance of people, so Void found himself to be acting in a more calming manner than usual. Hello, Void greeted with a growing smile before reaching out his hand with a fatherly tenderness. The little girl mumbled before taking a small step back. Oh, it's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you. Void wordily replied through shocked words while bringing his hand back in. Before Void could attempt to connect with his niece once again, the little girl turned on her feet and ran in the opposite direction, fleeing from everyone and disappearing down one of the many walkways. Huh? No, wait! Called the blue spark as he stood back to his feet with a hand outstretched. I didn't mean to scare you, he continued, feeling a newfound sense of falling confusion to enter his heart. Don't worry. She's just nervous. She'll come around soon enough. Cor assured to his brother before rubbing his shoulder. Void couldn't believe it. Cor had a kid, and he was an uncle. Turning to his brother again, Void tilted his head and asked, "Wait, so if you had a kid, then who's the mother?" Void curiously asked, making Cor close his mouth and nod his head low. "That's the thing I've been holding off on explaining to you all. I need you to see her first." He began before turning from Void and towards the others, and then straight towards the glowing tube of energy. Joby has no mother. I created her. A sudden silence felt to wash over the room from those words. Had Void and his family heard that right? Was what Cor just said what actually came from his mouth? What created her? Void inquired with a hard stare as a wave of confusion washed over his body. What do you mean, created her? Jida inquired while crossing her arms in a deep thought. I won't sugarcoat it. I'm not speaking fancy or anything like that. I created her. Cor repeated before turning and placing his hand upon the container of orange glowing light. With both science and this stuff here, the key to our future. Went on the older Novason as he stared into the vat of thick orange liquid. All approaching, Void and the others outside of Atlas and Evelyn found themselves being entranced in the strange energy, watching as their reflections twisted and bubbled within its campfire-looking glow. What is this stuff? Void asked as he too placed his hand upon the glass, feeling ever drawn to its power. It's matter, Void. Light and dark matter, to be exact. Cor finally revealed, watching as his face began to swirl and spin within its reflective haze. Light and dark matter? What's that? Jida curiously asked as she and the others turned to look upon Cor, who finally began to speak in full. It's what we sparks are made of. Not just that, it's what resides within every living creature. It is the essence that makes up the goods and evils of each and every conscious being's soul. It's life in its most energized and usable form. Cor explained before looking back down the Void, who stared back in a ponderous gaze. You remember what the sparks came from, right? How we came to be? What we started off as? Cor asked his younger brother, who turned and stared back into the vat of ooze. Of course. Sparks started off as mere mixtures from both the light and darkness that radiated off all realities. It's how the firstborn spark, Matira, came to be. Afterwards, she created us all in her image and... well, that is if the old stories are true. Void began, giving off a side of spark lore that Jida nor any of the others had heard about. That name, they all recognized it. It was Void's favorite curse, per se, whenever he found himself in a pickle or really anything he found to be shocking. By Matira was almost his catchphrase, one would dare say. So you do remember. Little brother, what was once thought to be old religious tales, I believe I found to be in truth, to some degree. Cor replied as he stepped away from the container and narrowed his sights upon everyone. About a year after Salvaheim's fall, I found myself in a state of inescapable depression. Me, Atlas, and Evelyn traveled between universe after universe in hopes to find a new life. But we never found peace. Instead, we found only sorrow. Cor started, now looking away to the glowing, pulsating metal floor. One day, after another restless wave of traveling, we came across a mirror space in the far-off in-betweens of our realities. To hope to try and clear our minds, we entered its domain in hopes to see if maybe our reflections were having it easier, to bring some kind of peace to our souls in some shape, way, and form, I suppose. Cor continued as both Atlas and Evelyn seemed to shy away for a moment, as they too reflected upon the heartache that had been present for oh so long. Yet, as we entered, we came across something unbelievable. One of the mirror shards had somehow split down the middle, as though something terrible had happened, Core described, now waving his hands with a certain excitement filling his soul. And there, leaking from its cracks, was puddles worth of this. Core expressed as he threw his left hand out to the side and gestured towards the massive container of light. Matter was seeping through a mirror space? That's intriguing. Void replied before crossing his arms with a curious stare. I agree. It's as if something or someone from that reflective space set its power free somehow, doing something that even a mirror space couldn't hold back. But Void, that's not the important thing. When I looked into its liquid form, I swear on Matira's eye, I saw only one thing. Core expressed before placing both of his hands on Void's shoulders. It was as if Hope was looking back at me. Walking up from behind, Atlas and Evelyn joined in at Core's sides before speaking up as well. We took several samples of it back to what was once a tiny craft and began to study it, curious as to what drew us in. Evelyn began before Atlas continued on. After thorough research, we came to the realization that the matter strands were powerful enough to create newfound life, as insane as that sounds. Approaching with curious stares, Nock, as well as the others, stood beside Void before the small mechanic began the question. What do you mean by newfound life? He asked, all while Void's curiosity continued to spike. We ran many tests with its power. It started off as simply studying its form, to realizing that we could create expansive plant life by injecting its essence in the seeds. Core answered as he began to make more wild hand gestures amidst his words. After those experiments, we soon began to expand and customize our ship, making it larger, stronger, turning it into a massive testing grounds as we discovered more and more about the matter each and every single day. Soon, we were able to create even more life, one being the creature you saw in Joey's arms. Core then exclaimed, causing everyone on Void's side to gaze up upon him with astonishment. The more we learned, the more we began to realize how closely our DNA strands matched the essence's power, said Evelyn, who now crossed her arms. All up till one day, your brother attempted to conduct the unimaginable. Atlas added before Core revealed the bomb-dropping detail Void and the others were slowly assuming to be. I decided to mix my DNA with the matter, and after many, many failed attempts, I eventually created my greatest creation, that being Joby, a spark. Jaw dropping with a profound look, Void quickly approached his brother before asking in a mixed set of words. Hang on a moment. Are you telling me you actually created her with your DNA alongside that? Void asked, gesturing towards the large canister of matter that continued to glow at a bright orange haze. It took many attempts, but yes, with the power of matter and my DNA, I was able to create life. 7 years later, me, Atlas, and Evelyn have been trying to do the same. Core went on before finally stating what exactly he and the other two have been doing for all this time. Void. What this is, the reformatter, all these labs and tubes of energy, it's all to help study and find a way to bring back what was lost. We're trying to bring the sparks out of extinction. It was as though a bomb had gone off in Void's and everyone else's heads. The spark couldn't process what he was hearing. Bringing back the sparks? Was that even possible? Wait, you're all of this, it's too... Void found himself mumbling again before Jida stepped in and spoke. How would that even be possible? How do you guys manage to get all this stuff? Jida inquired, gesturing towards the matter, leaving Core to continue in his words. The reformatter is designed to draw in matter from select spaces within realities. As we speak right now, matter is being carefully pulled from this reality into our machine, fueling the power cells that we are using to hopefully revive a species once lost. Core continued while Void slowly found his words. That's not gonna hurt this reality, is it? Void asked, leaving Core to shake his head, No, of course not. It's by mere molecules that expand once entering the system. This reality won't be hurt in any way, shape, and form. I can assure you. Core reasoned before Void spoke up again. I'm sorry. You're actually gonna attempt to bring our people back through all this? That's kind of insane, don't you think? Void asked Core, who simply sighed his words in response. Joby is proof that I can set things right. After Salvaheim's downfall, I constantly told myself that I should have done more. But now I feel as though I can. But to do this, I can't use my DNA over and over again. More research needs to be done. More matter on both sides needs to be collected for data. But I have the components to start anew for our people, Void. A new age of sparks. However, I now fear that we're losing our data by the minute. We weren't supposed to crash. Core worriedly expressed before approaching the massive container, and then looking down to a large control panel at its side. What do you mean by losing data? Kot questioned as Core transformed his arm back into that weird canister mode, and then shoved its 3-spiked end into an open hole upon the control deck side. The purple aura that had been stashed within then got shot or sucked into its opening, in turn causing a large flash of purple to spark within all glowing tubes, panels, and lights within the reformatter, before being followed up by a positive mechanical noise. Something went wrong with our thrusters, and we ended up crashing into this reality by some shred of a miracle. But in that process, we lost our 4, what we call dark matter conductors. Core explained as the ship's regular colors reverted back to normal, now with a more positive and brighter glow. That monster that you encountered, Abaddon, was one of the conductors having taken form. They're powerful vessels of dark matter I created to fuel the ship. Think of them as never-ending energy sources to power this. All of this. Core elaborated before continuing on. With them gone, and Materia knows where, we'll be actively losing energy along with all of this. Core went on as he placed his hand upon the massive orange glowing canister. As we speak, those conductors could be taking shape in the Lord knows what. Monsters, beasts, who knows? Atlas revealed, tapping his sharp claws upon the metal flooring. We can track them, but it may take a while given the low power. But every second we now waste, it could mean another several years added on to trying to revive our people. Evelyn added, as their eyes returned upon the blue spark and his family. These conductors you speak of, we saw them fall from your ship. It seemed like they were ripped into other dimensions once they fell. Mentioned Jida, who simply stared on in a deep thought. That's what we mean. The longer they're out there, the more of a risk it poses not just our research, but to those who may be in their presence. The last thing we need right now is more death on our hands. Core explained before he and the others focused back upon Void, who just stared on with a whirlwind of thoughts. Look, I know this is probably a lot to take in, but I assure you that we are trying to do this all in the name of honoring who we lost, Core expressed before kneeling down the Void. Like you, we're trying to avenge our people, but in a more intense and scientific way, I suppose. The older Spark reasoned before reciting the quota. For those we lost and for those we honor, right? Taking in a long breath, Void found himself to be riding in a roller coaster of thoughts. All of this, from learning that his brother and his friends were still alive, to having a niece, and now facing the facts that the Sparks could fully return one day. It made him feel overwhelmed. For the first time in a long time, Void needed some time to just think. Core, all of this, it's unbelievable. Never would I have imagined a possibility such as this. But I need some time to think. To really let my mind settle with all this, you know? Slowly nodding his head, Core stood back up and replied with his continuous, calming voice. I completely understand, Void. Truly. Take as much time as you need. Walking up, Evelyn and Atlas crouched down to be eye level with the spark, before speaking in their own terms as well. When you're ready, we can discuss more in full. I'm not one to really be the motivational speaker, but let yourself process this, alright? Let's sleep set your thoughts straight. They both said, leaving Void to nod in an almost woozy state. Yeah, I'll be back. I just need a few hours to think. Void repeated, before scratching the back of his head with a now noticeable headache pounding within. Now, slowly walking forward, the younger spark approached Core and gave him a firm hug once again, before backing off and standing in between his found family. I will return, I promise. He said again before slowly turning and shooting a portal open that led back to Nox's workshop. And then he hobbled through, looking as though he were about to puke. You're all free to come back at any time. As of now, you are all welcome members to the family. Core expressed as Nox and the others said their goodbyes with handshakes and nods. However, as they all went to leave and crossed through, Core spoke once more, calling out Jida in particular. Jida, he said, causing the musician to turn with a curious stare. Approaching her with a calm gesture, Core placed a hand upon her shoulder and gently spoke with words of gratitude. Thank you for accepting my brother, and for helping him eradicate the demons of our past. Take care of him for us tonight. Like all the others I can only assume you have before. I believe we may have overwhelmed him. Nodding, Jida gave a stern, "Of course, Core," before stepping back and waving to the three sparks, and then disappearing from view as the portal sealed shut. Well, that's not what I expected out of today, Evelyn stated before standing tall and coiling her tail around her neck to act as some kind of scarf. No, neither did I, Core added with a continuous tone of disbelief, all up to a ping alerted upon the massive matter holder's control pad. All turning, the three sparks were alerted to a holographic diagram of the world they were stationed within. Earth, it said, in bold words, however, spelled without the A. Next to it, glowing with a yellow shimmer, was the words, M detector, estimated 98% positive, LM and DM high. As the sparks read those words, all three of their eyes widened in shock to it. What? Core said in a low breath as a new hologram appeared, showing a set of recently recorded files. With one of the conductors back inside the reformatter, it allowed for its internet and data to hop back online, giving the sparks a rundown of what was important. Wait a second. The other three conductors, they're still here? On this planet? Evelyn asked as she read the list of words and notes that just came through. They were pulled right back into this world. Drawn to. I gotta run some tests. Atlas shouted aloud before turning and running into one of the labs with multiple sets of sharp cracks below him. This world, the M ratings, the M radiation levels, they're off the charts. Atlas, wait for me. Evelyn shouted too as she made a hard dash for the labs as well, while Core slowly approached the glowing energies with stunned eyes. Raising his left hand up, he began to scratch his chin, all up before saying one last thing to himself. Bye, Matira, were the words that left his mouth as he stared wide-eyed upon the giant screen that glowed before him. Opening his eyes to a familiar blaring sound, Void quickly reached his arm out and hit the alarm clock on both his and Jida's bedside desk. On the screen, it read the words 6:30 a.m., the time Void usually gets up just to do anything, really. Squinting as a dim blue light shined through the window, the spark quietly looked away and turned to his right, finding Jida fast asleep and facing upwards towards the ceiling. With a small sigh, the spark swung his legs over the bed and sat upon its ledge, rubbing his face as the memories of yesterday came back swiftly into his brain. Quietly getting up, he shuffled his way out of the room and into the hallway, proceeding to march his way inside a bathroom on the left. Turning on a bright light, Void sighed again and cracked his neck along with his arms, proceeding to then brush his teeth, and the next, approach the shower. Lifting his left arm up, the spark clicked a few buttons upon its form to retract the clothing pieces upon his body. Away went his sweater top, along with his pants and socks, leaving only his bare head along with a metallic body to glint in the bathroom light. Stepping into the shower, Void pulled the curtain aside and turned the faucet knob, allowing for the warm sensation of water to douse his face and body. Raising his hands up, the spark took some shampoo and began to wash his head, behind the horns and then in between the panels and rivets of his metallic skin, all the while thinking about the day prior. So much raced through his mind, so much love and so much confusion, yet he couldn't deny that he had a better viewpoint of what he learned, but still found to be in a trail of doubt. Bringing back the sparks. Void mumbled to himself, pushing water off his head in a still tired tone. How on earth do you just do that? Void asked himself before scrubbing his neck in thought. I mean, if Joby is proof of that, then by Matira, I don't even... Void? Jida suddenly called from the bathroom doorway, slightly startling the spark with surprise. Huh? Yeah? What are you doing up so early? He asked as the sound of Jida's footfalls entered the bathroom. I heard you getting up. I wanted to check in. You mind if I join you? She then softly asked, leaving the spark to think on his own for a second. Of course. He replied whilst continuing to face the shower head. After a few moments of silence, the sounds of shuffling clothes and then the noise of the curtain being drawn back became loud and clear, all until the spark felt Jida wrap her arms around him from behind, and then lean her head upon his shoulder. I kinda lied, actually. I heard you mumbling to yourself again, Jida said as water rained down upon their heads in small specks. Oh, was I really being that loud? Void asked as Jida quietly nuzzled her head against Void's. A little. Are you doing alright? Your mind feeling more clear? Jida asked as Void looked over his shoulder, seeing her messy orange hair fall to that of a wet mop. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still baffled by it all. Void answered before feeling Jida beginning to scrub soap from out of his horns. I understand. Honestly, if my little brother showed back up one day, I wouldn't know what to do or think. I'm surprised you didn't even faint. Looking down with a sigh, Void crossed his arms before turning back to face his wife, meeting her wintry white eyes with a set of pounding thoughts. Looking down at her husband with a cross in her arms, Jida could see the look in Void's eyes, the uncertainty, the pondering. She knew it all too well. What's the matter, sweetheart? Jida asked, leaving the spark to look at his side. It's just the whole reviving the sparks thing. It just seems insane. Unreal, I guess. Void went on before taking some soap and beginning to scrub and wash Jida's hair. Everything I thought I knew was just flipped over on its head. Years of pain have just seemed to just wash away out of nowhere. I've never been more confused and curious in my life. And I don't even know if it's in a positive or negative light. Tilting her head and brushing her hair aside, Jida locked her eyes with her sparks once more with a tenderest love only she could convey. Gently reaching out, Jida brushed the back of her hand against Void's cheek, sending a feeling of warmth forward into his skin. Life is full of curveballs, my love. You and I both know that better than most. Jida mentioned as Void softly leaned himself into her hand. Tell me, what's the one thing your heart is telling you to do in this moment? What's your soul beckoning you to do? Jida asked before wrapping both her arms around the Spark's neck and swaying them gently from side to side. That's the thing, Freckles. I don't know what it's telling me. There are so many thoughts running through my mind, for once, I don't know what to do. Void reasoned, leaving Jida to ponder for a moment more. Well, you want to know what I'm thinking? Jida inquired, leaving Void to just silently stare and shrug his shoulders. Personally, I think that you should help your fellow Sparks and find those conductors. Jida suggested, leaving Void to tilt his head in thought. You think so? I mean, the prospect of reviving a species, playing God, essentially, it's... Void replied, leaving Jida to simply nod with thought. Look, I know it's not my call to make, but I think if there's a chance to bring back the world you once lost, I believe you deserve to have a helping hand in making that a reality. Jida reasoned, recalling on how much pain Void had been in about losing his people. What about you? I don't want to leave you and the little one for a seemingly dangerous task right now. You saw Abaddon. I don't know how long finding those things could take, how much of a risk it could pose. Void reasoned before placing his hand upon Jida's stomach, who placed her hand atop his in return. I'm just saying, it's not every day a chance such as this comes crashing out of the sky. Literally, I'd say take it and help your brother and his friends fix their machine. Me and little Jay or Jane will be alright. We both know you'll always come back. Jida ensured, leaning her forehead against Void's. Of course, it's your choice, love. Thinking for a long moment, Void lifted his head back up and nodded gently to Jida's words. She was right. What was going on now was a 1 in a million chance of happening. If Core could really bring their people back somehow, then Void would see the help in that process. I suppose you're right. I can't dwell on this one. If there is a chance at saving my race, I gotta help. Void replied before finishing off with another reason. Plus, if those conductors really have taken form, people could be in serious danger. They may need help. Upon hearing his words, Jida found herself smiling and nodding her head, now seeing that a hint of light and optimism within Void's eyes. There's the Void I know, she said before taking a small dose of shampoo and placing it upon where the Spark's nose should have been. Boop, she quietly spouted, leaving Void to smile and roll his eyes. Taking the shampoo bottle in his hands, Void emptied a good wad of soap into his palm and then gently smacked it upon Jida's hair with a wet and slimy plop, making her gasp in a shocked laugh. Boop, he replied with a smug grin on his face. Void! She laughed out before taking a wad of it off her head and smacking it against the Spark's horns. Asshole! She jokingly called, leaving the both of them to start laughing, all while the purple energy within Jida's stomach began to glow brightly, being ignited by their parents' love and joy for one another. It wasn't long after until the two had fully washed themselves up and stepped out of the shower. Void was back to wearing his dark blue attire, while Jida relaxed herself in a pink bathrobe. I'll be back tonight, I promise, assured the Spark before opening a portal at his side. I know you will. Just be safe for us, alright? Jida asked before the both of them approached and shared a tender kiss. Go get him, Blue Bullet. Finished Jida, leaving Void to smirk and nod his head. Stepping back, he took one more glance to his wife and then crossed through, leaving the room as well as Jida to her own self. After the portal closed, Jida sighed before holding her stomach once more, feeling the warmth inside her kick and wriggle in a gentle manner. Oh, stop it. He'll be okay. Maybe if all this stuff works out, you'll have other Sparks to call friends, Jida suggested before turning and slowly heading downstairs to make herself some breakfast. Let's just hope your father doesn't take that long. Your kicks can be a pain in the A, sir. Miss? Whatever you are. Jada giggled to herself before making her way to the bottom of the floor in slow steps. Back within the reformator, Cor, Alice, and Evelyn were all hard at work in trying to find and locate the exact locations of the conductors, when from behind emerged a bright blue glow. Turning around to see a star-shaped portal, the three Sparks bear witness the void, stepping through all on his own, before simply greeting his fellow Sparks with a newfound smirk and nod. This in turn left Cor to have the same reaction, a simple smirk and nod to his little brother. "Void, welcome back," he greeted with a tender smile.